thank you for coming on, and thank you for all the work that you do, which is absolutely incredible. The number of people that you've got on following you on YouTube, and when it must have been about 2 years ago.
Sorry?
It must have been about 2 years ago that you started your YouTube channel.
Yeah, something like it was about that. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
24,000 now. It's going well.
Absolutely. Well, you dedicate so much time to it as well. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah,
absolutely
it's hard work,
fantastic.
but it's worth it as well. It saves me boring my friends by talking about politics because they don't want to hear it. So I might as well tell people that actually want to talk about it.
Well, do you know what? That's one of the great things about modern communication methods is you can do exactly that. If you don't have an immediate circle of friends who are interested, you can very quickly find an online circle of friends. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you watched the whole of the King's speech today. I always hesitate because it's really Starmer's speech. The King reads it out.
Yeah.
Some foreign people might think that the King dreams it all up and decides to tell everybody his latest plans on, gender reassignment or net zero or whatever. But of course, it's Keir Starmer's speech that's read out by the head of state. Did you get a chance to watch it in between your work?
I watched bits of it. To be honest with you, I wasn't glued to it because I could have guessed most of what was going to be in it anyway. Big state, big government, and to be honest with you, I am a monarchist, but I think Charles would be quite happy reading most of that stuff out because we know what he thinks about a lot of things anyway. So I think think he'd be more than happy to go along with all this GB energy, net zero stuff and all that. I think he'll be over the moon tonight.
I think that he's for some reason he's got a thing about that, which we're best just to leave to him on that. But certainly you and I know the absurdity of much of that. But that GB energy thing, do you understand what they're trying to do with that? They said they were going to set up well, do you know what it is?
In a nutshell, it's going to be net zero on steroids. They're going to try and do everything they say through what they're calling renewable and sustainable methods of heating your homes, etc. It's going. They're saying it's going to make bills cheaper and make them more cost effective, but it's not, is it? If this was going to work and you're going to nationalize something like this, then you need fossil fuels. There's absolutely no question about it. And Ed Miliband thinks he can walk around already trying to cancel 240,000 jobs at least in this country by taking away oil and gas licenses. And he thinks he can now do all this by 2030 without nuclear power. He's off his rocker. And I'm afraid Labour are going to go along with it. And I've got absolutely no idea why Starmer is being so stupid, because they must know. The civil servants must know. The civil servants, it's reported, even told Ed Miliband, this is a bad idea. You can't do this. It's too quick. You're going to screw people. But he doesn't care. He's just gone along with it anyway. And I think it's because Dale Vince is one of their main donors and gave them millions of pounds. And he owns that Ecotricity that just so happens to build things like wind turbines and then ship them over here. So that's what's going on here. And they're trying to please the biggest donors. And I'm afraid it's going to cost you and me and everybody watching this a hell of a lot of money on your bills. If renewables were so efficient and so cheap, and they try and say they're cheaper than the gas and gas and oil, if they were that cheap, then they wouldn't be putting 20% on top of your energy bills now to subsidize this industry. And if it was so profitable, the private sector would be all over it, but they're not. They don't want anything to do with it because the government won't give them big enough subsidies, because the money that they're going to have to spend on it is ridiculous and they won't get a return on it.
That's a good point, isn't it? It's like, where's the private sector in all of this? And if they're not seeing any return for their money, then clearly this is a failing industry. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, you made the direct conclusion there that it's as a consequence of a big funder of the Labour Party putting a lot of money into the Labour Party for exactly that. And that could be so as well. I mean, that's probably a big element of it. Sometimes I wonder if it's almost like they don't want us, the nation, to succeed, because for an economy to work, it needs cheap energy. For any economy to be successful, the energy has to be cheap, and that's been since the dawn of time. When you acquire cheap energy, then you get a successful economy. So people who are pushing inefficient energy methods and extremely expensive energy methods, I mean, they're undermining the economy straight away. And that's to say nothing of impoverishing the actual population.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you wondered, is this part of a wider agenda to literally impoverish not just Britain, but the West in general, to pull down our economies in some way in order to benefit economies in the rest of the world or something? I know this is just when one's casting around to figure out how this can be happening when it's against all the all of history, all of economic wisdom. It's baffling.
Look at what
Absolutely
we're
baffling.
importing. We're importing shale gas when we've got it in this country. We've got gas and oil in the North Sea. We've got coal mines in Wales that the Tories were going to reopen. Labour have already scrapped that now as well, so that's gone as well. So now, and then they say, well, we don't want to fund economies like Russia. I don't know if you've seen, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the war situation, but Russia's economy, since that war started, has absolutely flourished as the West tried to ruin it, because they're still selling all their gas and oil. The thing is, it's going to countries like India and other places. They're still buying it for fairly cheap prices. And then we're the idiots that are buying it off these countries, and it's being shipped over here anyway with a premium price on it. So we're still buying Russian fossil fuels. It's just that they don't want to tell you that. And all of a sudden, this is greener. These wind turbines, hardly any, next to none, get built in this country. What happens is they get shipped over here on massive tankers, which nobody talks about either because it's one of the most polluting ways to transport things across the sea like that. But it gets sent over here, and then they've got a lifespan of maximum 20 years. They can't be recycled. Look at some of these countries that have had wind turbines for years. They've got field, acre after acre of fields with wind turbines in them that cannot be recycled, and they just sit there rotting away. Well, they don't even rot, they just rust and sit there, damaging the ecology of a country.
Yeah.
And then they tell you this is good for the planet. And some of these, by the way, some of the ones in Scotland are actually being run, wind turbines, believe it or not, on fossil fuel generators.
No way.
I saw a video a while ago. I can't remember where it was exactly now. One of the wind farms in Scotland, and it was being run on fossil fuel generators. That is the madness of these people.
Unbelievable. That's a good point, though. Again, about the Russian thing. But you would think we would say we'll be energy independent, so we're not dependent upon Russia or any other country.
Yeah.
We're not. You would think that would be a natural way of looking at it. Energy independence, an absolutely essential principle of national sovereignty. You don't really have national sovereignty if you can't be energy independent. It's just one of the basics. We wrote an article that will part of a 10-part series on fundamental principles, and energy independence is one of them. Always has been, always will be. And Christopher here says the Chinese and Indians are happily burning coal in massive amounts.
The Chinese are building a coal-fueled power station. I think it's one a week.
Yeah.
and they think that by you giving up your your gas boiler, you're going to change the world. When they've got a population of over 1 billion people. They've got so many people over there. They've had to put a limit on how many children people can have. Yet they think that a 60 million country like this is going to make a blind bit of difference to the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got to lead by example. The world stage. I couldn't give a toss what we look like on the world stage. I just want people to have cheap energy, which they could have if we had some politicians that had a bit of backbone about them. But unfortunately, we're stuck with a government with a massive majority that can do what the hell it wants, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it.
Yes, indeed. The only break on them is the fear that they'll do something and lose votes to like an upcoming party like reform, for example. That's one break on their right-hand side. On their left-hand side, they're threatened in a few seats also by the Greens.
Yeah, they are.
And so then they've got to think, well, we've got to talk up our green agenda to those people when we talk to them. And then when we talk to the reform type ex-Labour supporters, we've got to talk that down and talk up energy independence and so on. Do you think that nationalising the railways do you think that's going to make much of a difference? That was one of the things he was thinking about, wasn't it? Or saying
that's
that
one
he's
of the
going
things
to
they've
do.
announced as well. Well, I can't see how it's going to make anything better. I'm sure many people in this watching this now, I do vaguely. I was only young. Remember British Rail, and I remember how bad British Rail was. I'm sure many of us do as well. Privatisation, has it made things much, much, much better? Probably not. Is it cheaper to run? Yes, because it's private companies employing staff. So it's cheaper for the economy to run it. Is it really going to help us by buying all these companies now? I don't know how many different providers there are, but you're going to have to buy them out of all the contracts. You're going to have to get all the trains. You're going to have to get all the staff. That's all coming out of the public purse. It's going to be one big, expensive, I think, failed experiment. And Starmer has also said he's going to strengthen loosen the rules around trades unions, meaning that they no longer have to vote now and get a majority to call a strike. They no longer have. He's going to do things like the minimum service limits on people. He's going to allow people to call lightning strikes when they just take place at drop of a hat. And these are all things that are going to come back to bite him, because if he does one thing wrong and these railway workers decide they want a 40% pay rise, Starmer says no, right, that's it, roll out. It's going to be like on the buses, isn't it? Remember on the buses with Jack in it, when he goes, all out, brothers. It's going to be just like that every time the government says no.
It could be back to the 70s again.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember the 70s. Len Murray. I always remember that name, Len Murray. He was some trade union leader for was it British Leyland or something like that? And in Birmingham. And they always seemed to be striking. And all these nationalised industries were always striking. That's how I remember 1970s. Cars didn't start and everybody's on strike. That was the 1970s, basically. And then Thatcher came along and somehow it seemed to get, she seemed to somehow change that. I don't know quite what she did. But
she changed all the rules. These rules that Starmer now wants to get rid of. By
right.
stopping, she outsmarted the unions. What was his name? The guy that was mayor of London, Ken Livingstone.
Yeah.
He had a saying after Thatcher took him to the cleaners. They had a saying about him. He was he was a trades unionist who had a small house and a big union, and he finished up having a big house and a small union because he made a lot of money out of it. And he also destroyed his own union because Thatcher changed the rules so strict on the unions. That's the way it should be. We can't allow people to, like you said, go back to the 70s. But that's what Labour, it seems, are trying to do for some reason.
Yeah, they've got this kind of attachment to striking and so on. I'm not against trade unions or anything like that, but at the same time, if you're trying to run a country, especially these critical services, there has to be certain rules over how you can bring the whole thing to a sticky end or to a stop. There has to be. Well, time will tell whether it will make much difference or not. I don't think there's a direct comparison between British Rail in the 70s and today in a way, because I think things are better today in that the idea of public relations is a lot better. You know, I don't think in the 70s, the whole idea that the customer has to come first and all that kind of stuff, I don't think that ever really figured very highly in the whole British Rail thing. But now I think it might be better. So it's a slightly different cultural environment is what I'm trying to say, that this nationalisation is coming around in. So it might be better, but what he could do and what Labour always do is they make things better and then they do something deliberately to make the whole thing worse. So, you know, the trains might run in time, but what will happen is that they're always on strike. So they never get to run on time. But if they actually went to work, they would run on time, but like, everybody's always out and striking. So you know, we don't see the glory of it. But that's
It
definitely
remains to be
something.
seen,
So
doesn't it? How
yeah,
bad it's going to be. I don't know myself, but
yeah,
I don't know if you saw, but I don't. Also, sorry, on the King's Speech as well, Labour had apparently dropped all commitments to ending the small boats and the illegal immigration crisis, and the legal immigration crisis as well. And the pressure on them is so much to do something about it that they actually put it back into their speech at the very last minute to do
really?
something about it. Yeah, because over the last couple of days, we've had record numbers. Before the general election, I did a video pointing out a Telegraph journalist had been over to Calais to speak to these migrants, and they were literally waiting for July the 4th, and they were waiting for Labour to win the election, and then they were coming over here. And that's what we're
Yeah.
seeing. We're seeing over 1,000 already since Labour got into power, and it's going to get worse and worse under Labour.
Yeah. Well, I'll just bring up what the papers were saying today about what was in that regarding border controls, and it says border security. We'll just get rid of that bottom banner. Border security, asylum and immigration. To use counter-terrorism style powers to investigate the people smuggling gangs. That sounds kind of macho, but what that means in reality, who knows? Tougher penalties introduced for advertising people smuggling and supplying materials to organized crime gangs. Tougher penalties to smash the gangs, as they say. The King's Speech confirms the new command will be funded by scrapping the Rwanda deportation scheme, which will save 100 million in future payments. Presumably that the Rwanda deportation scheme would cost. However, there's going to be
as a deterrent.
Yeah, but there's going to be a cost. There's just going to be an equal and opposite cost, if not a bigger cost, of keeping them here in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what worries me at the bottom here. It also pledges to clear the backlog of asylum claims, including some 90,000 migrants who would have been sent to Rwanda, and end the use of hotels to house them. End the use of hotels to house them. Well, where are they going to sleep? You know, they're not going to be sleeping under a bridge. What they're going to be doing is moving these people into new housing and new accommodation centres that they're going to be building all over the country. You know, when Starmer says he's going to be building so many more new houses, these are not houses for us. These are not houses for the indigenous British people. These are houses for the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are coming over illegally every week, every month.
Who's going to pay for that? It's going to be you and me. Because Rachel Reeves said, Labour are going to build, 1.5 million, wasn't it, in 5 years? So 300,000 homes a year. Then she said, well, we're not going to do it. Actually, the private sector is going to do it. So every time I've seen a new build estate go up, the decent homes, most of them get filled. Some don't even get filled because the average house price in this country is now 285,000, which no first-time buyer can possibly afford to get a 10% deposit for. Then she said, well, the private sector can build all these social housing. I'm like, no, they're not. They would never do that because they're going to lose so much money. I think it's 15% of each new build estate now has to have 15%, I think, social housing on it. And all they do is they come to the end of building the proper houses, not proper houses, you know what I mean, the more valuable houses. And then they say, oh, we've gone bust, and they rename the company and they move on to the next place, and they don't build the social housing. So none of this social house, none of this social housing is going to get built. So when you say they're going to put these migrants into, I don't know, 4 or 5 bedroom houses or something like that the average Brit couldn't afford, who's going to be paying to put them in there? It probably costs more than putting them in hotels.
Exactly.
They've taken away the only deterrent we had. And Rwanda might have been expensive, but it was acting as a deterrent. The numbers were down. People were leaving this country to go to Ireland and places like that and go back to the EU because they were so frightened of being sent to Rwanda. The Tory government had detained hundreds of people waiting to go out on the first few flights. Labour, on their first day, said, no, it's all right, you can all go free. So they've let them out into the country now. We don't know where they are. They could be anybody. They could have done anything, anywhere in the world. And they could be next door to you for all you know. You simply don't know where they are now. And that 90,000 you just referenced, that's going to be an amnesty. They're going to say, everyone off you go, all in. That's all it's going to be. They'll do nothing.
Yes. That's in this article. Labour will allow 100,000 migrants to apply for asylum in quote-unquote effective amnesty. That's from the Telegraph a week ago, 9th of July. Some 90,000 migrants earmarked for deportation to Rwanda will be among those who will be processed through the asylum system. And they will be coming to a village and town near you.
Yeah.
According to Isabel Oakeshott here, Labour won't stop the boats. It'll send migrants to your town.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that as being a big issue, which is going to come into everybody's consciousness over the next 5 years. And how we as the British people respond to this is going to determine the future of the nation and whether we can even stay British, English, Scottish, Welsh. The Irish are struggling to remain Irish right now. And of course, they have a totally traitorous class, which is as bad, if not worse, as our traitorous class, and also made up of people who don't have a clue anyway what's going on. I mean, I was watching the Irish Justice Minister, some 38-year-old woman who wouldn't know one end of the immigration situation from another.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's, we don't want to be nasty and to immigrants. We don't want to sound racist, so we'll just let the entire world come in. She's not operating on any kind of fundamental philosophy other than some kind of mild or ridiculous anti-racist feeling that it's maybe the right thing to do is just allow everybody to come and live in the Republic of Ireland now. I mean to say, Patrick Pearse would be turning in his grave. Patrick Pearse is turning in his grave along with that Connolly fellow and the rest of them, I'm sure.
The irony, though, isn't it, that Sinn Féin, who we all know were involved with the IRA, didn't want anybody taking over Ireland. Ireland must remain Irish and all this stuff. They were so scared of the British Army going in there and taking over the place that they fought back. Then now they're happy to dilute the entire population by importing these people. And I wouldn't incite anyone to violence, but I'll tell you what, this country needs some sort of Irish response, because I've got absolute full respect for those Irish citizens that are out there on the street now, and they are doing their damn best to make sure that these migrants don't get moved into their towns, their communities, their hotels, and any spare housing that's lying around.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for them, and they've got the whole might of the state. And it's really is upsetting to watch these horrible riot police just wading in on these just very working class people who are upset about the invasion of their villages and towns, and they're getting beaten with batons and dragged off and pepper sprayed and stuff like that. And you just think the Irish state, the Irish Republic, our state would do exactly the same thing,
You want to be careful, those Irish police, though. We've seen what Irish people do when they rise up. And as we saw when the British Army went to Northern Ireland, they want to be very careful, because they might get a bigger response than they ever dreamed of if they push people too far.
Yes. Well, presumably they've got it figured out, and they know who to target on those sorts of things, in the sense of who the leaders of the resistance are, and to prevent it going to that level. They're just hoping that they can just crush the will, I think, of the people, and prevent them. And that's what they're going to try to do in this country as well over the next few years. I mean, Starmer's starting out today with these sorts of things, but it could get a lot worse. But from the sublime to the ridiculous, what's this smoking ban? You can't sell. You can't smell. You can't sell cigarettes to somebody born after 2009. So does that?
Yeah.
Well, does that mean like what's somebody born in 2009 just now will be like 15? Thereabouts. So when they become 18, does that mean they can't buy it legally?
No, they'll be able to, won't they? It's anybody born after that won't be able to buy them, which again is ridiculous. Fine, we all know smoking's bad for you, but if you choose to do it, that is your personal choice. That is your free will. And if you've got the money to do it, then fair play to you, because I couldn't afford to smoke. But it's absolutely ridiculous that they think they can get involved in things like this. I've got the craziest policy they've talked about. I'm not joking here. This is absolute fact. Talking about controlling how much food people eat and how much processed food people eat. So what they're saying is they could even look into how many toppings you're allowed to have on a pizza and how big that pizza will be. That is that is
the shit. Oh, that's that. You sure you haven't been pranked with that one? That's
no. Honest to God, that was on GB News. It was on Talk TV. They've all said it. That this is the kind of crap. I'm trying my best not to swear about this. I swear to God that this is the kind of nanny statism that they want to get involved in. There was even something on school uniforms. I completely forgot what it was now. They even mentioned school uniforms. They think they can get involved in every aspect of your lives, and that's what happens when you vote for socialist parties like this. They got through the general election campaign by doing and saying absolutely nothing because the Tories were so useless. Mm-hmm. Then they scraped through. I know they got a big majority, but as Jeremy Corbyn called it, it's a loveless landslide. They got a 0.1% vote share increase from 2019 when they got levered, and this time they've come out with a big majority. Starmer is there by default, and I give him 3 years at most before he's ousted by his own party.
That's interesting. That's interesting, and you are seldom wrong, so you might well be right on that one. We're at the top of the hour, so let me just run through your contact details again. You are That Preston Journalist, and you are on you're on YouTube at where are we here? Let's bring this up. YouTube.com/That Preston Journalist. Yep. Very good site. And also on X.com/AK Writing 88.